This is Fred Richani. In this interview, we chat with director Tommy Avallone, the man behind the new Barney documentary streaming on Peacock, I Love You, You Hate Me.
This is Barney, and this is what he sounded like.
Barney stands for inclusion, acceptance.
You should love everyone. We all have Sheryl Leach to thank for that.
As her beloved character was heading into the stratosphere, people couldn't accept that this was just a show, and so let the bashing begin.
Some of the rumors that I heard, Barney hides drugs in his tail.
They were violent and explicit.
Death and dismemberment of my family.
I love you, Barney.
They were going to come and find me, and they were going to kill me.
Just the dark side of this whole moment.
Tommy, thank you so much for joining us. We just checked out highlights of the brand new documentary streaming right now on Peacock, I Love You, You Hate Me. Were you aware of the entire Barney story before you started working on this, or did you just have kind of a genuine curiosity on what happened to Barney?
There was a curiosity, and it wasn't even about Barney, really. You know, I saw this old 1993 newscast of as the University of Nebraska, it was a Barney bashing event where all these college kids from the early 90s were just beating up Barney, like hitting him with a hammer, ripping him apart. It was this like event they had. And at the end, the newscaster was like, that's the future of our country right there. And it's like, oh, we're kind of in that future now. There's a lot of this hate going on. Why don't we just talk about like love and hate, but through the eyes of Barney the Dinosaur in this story? So we just started doing research and found it was created by these two school teachers, their moms, and wanted to make a videotape for their kid that was educational and also from like Dallas, Texas. So it was each time we stepped into another, like, oh, that's crazy. Oh, that's crazy. You know? So
what would you say is kind of like the craziest thing like you uncovered? Was it the hate? Was it the impact that the character had on all these people that you interviewed?
Certainly the way the success affected the family that created Barney was, probably the most like, oh my God, but what was really interesting is the amazing, crazy, weird, and I say crazy, weird in the most positive way possible, characters that went into creating Barney. I mean, some of the voice of Barney also did voices from Chuck E. Cheese. Like if you remember Chuck E. Cheese, like the dog and the chef, like that's Barney. That's the same voice. We talked to one of the original writers of Barney, and he has this like bird collection. There's like 13 birds flying around when we interviewed him, and I am terrified of birds. The other writer of Barney, he did write for Chuck E. Cheese. So you wrote Chuck E. Cheese and Barney, and then obviously the body of Barney, he went on to become a tantric sex guru. So it just, we interviewed a man in a chicken suit. There's some wacky stuff going on. And then we got to interview Steve from Blue's Clues, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and Al Roker.
You definitely had some good gets there. When you initially found out that you weren't going to be able to interview Sheryl, the creator of Barney, or anybody kind of associated directly with the creation of Barney, were you ready to throw in the towel, or did you feel like you had enough people and subjects overall to continue the story?
No, I did a whole, I met Sheryl, and it was interesting to talk to her and get to know her. And, in doing so, the Barney people, especially Sheryl, they just always shied away from the hate, any sort of negative reaction towards Barney, they just never addressed. Even some of the writers were like, maybe we should address this, maybe we should address that, but there was never something that they wanted to talk about. So, in doing a documentary like this, if it was just called I Love You, I'm sure she would be in it. But the fact that we talk about the You Hate Me section of it, because at the end of the day, she talks about being Barney's mom, and Barney was in some ways her child. So she took a lot of this bashing to heart. So it was definitely something she didn't want to be a part of in that regard.
For sure. And one thing the documentary talked about that I thought was really interesting was the fact that at the time Barney was created, there wasn't a whole lot of content for kids, that young, right? It was either something like Sesame Street, or it was an extreme where there's like too much violence for children. Do you feel like in today's day and age, if Barney came out right now with all the content options kids have, that it would get even remotely the kind of hate it got back then?
I probably wouldn't get the same amount of hate, but also wouldn't get the same amount of love. I think there is definitely, it's just harder to kind of break through nowadays. Like to exactly what you said, like Sesame Street was the big one. Mr. Rogers was the big one. And they're speaking to children on a wide range, whereas Barney was one of the first people to be like, no, we're talking to like the 0 to 4-year-olds. and that market was really, really, really untapped. And then after Barney comes out, when Barney comes out is roughly around the time like Nick Jr. is coming out. They don't really have a hit until Blue's Clues, which is like 1996. You have Teletubbies coming out later on PBS. The big ones right now are like Blippi or like, was it Coco Melon? Like, and these are all, especially Blippi, he was definitely very Barney-like in that, Barney made these tapes and the tapes became popular and they went on PBS. Whereas Blippi went on YouTube, became extremely popular. His toys are in Target. He's in all these other different streaming platforms, and he's a millionaire. So it would just be harder, I think, for him to kind of crack through.
Was there one person that even you were surprised that you got, something that maybe was a little elusive?
It was amazing how much negotiation went on with the San Diego Chicken. But I'll tell you, like when we finally got the guy who created the I Hate Barney Secret Society, that was like a big get because, Steve from Blue's Clues, Bill Nye, they have agents and managers, Bob the voice or David Joyner, the body of Barney. They have big Facebook social media presence. Rob, the guy from Florida who created, the I Hate Barney Secret Society, doesn't have a big team around him. So to finally get him to respond, and then for him to say yes and be a part of it, that was a unique one. We're like, yes, got him.
That was awesome. And have you tried to get the Barney jihadists and the gentleman that you had that runs the Barney fan club in the same room? Or do you think that might be too combustible?
Yeah, no, I'm not really that kind of documentarian film. It's like, it's like you build these sort of fake scenarios and try to get, it's like, I'm actually doing this new documentary right now called The House From, and it's all about people who live in famous houses. What's it like to live in the Full House or House from Friday? But we brought some of the people from the movie Can't Hardly Wait to the Can't Hardly Wait house, like Ethan Umbre. Like we brought him back to the house, and that's okay for me to do. Like, oh, here, even though you weren't going to do this already, just do this for us, and we get your real reactions on camera. We have a Kickstarter for that. It's on thehousefrom.com. But whereas this, it's like it never felt for Barney. It never felt like we wanted to see anyone like, hey, what's the Jihad Destroy Barney guy going to do with if they met Bob West? Like, that'd be weird,
We really do appreciate your time, Tommy. Before we let you go, we always like to ask all our guests some kind of random and rapid fire questions just to get to know them better. Are you ready?
Here we go.
Besides Barney, who's your favorite Barney character?
I'll say Riff.
You had a lot of great subjects. Who would you say was your favorite or most interesting to interview?
I'm going to say David Voss. He was the original Barney, and some questions he was so uncomfortable answering. It's just funny to see his reactions, and I enjoyed David Voss. He's a good guy.
Are there any documentarians, any filmmakers who inspired you to get into filmmaking?
I love Matt Ogens. He made this documentary called The Confessions of a Superhero, and man, it's my favorite movie. It's these guys that like dress up like Superman and Wonder Woman and the Hulk and Batman on Hollywood Boulevard and what they do, and it's one of my favorite ones. And Matt's a friend now, and Matt Ogens for sure. Now
I understand you're also a pro wrestling guy like me, which is pretty cool. Who are your all-time favorite wrestlers and current favorite pro wrestler?
Oof. I'm loving Roman Reigns as a heel right now. I'm loving that. We try to put a professional wrestler in every single one of our movies, and we wanted to get John Cena in this because we felt like he was the real life Barney, booed, like celebrated by the people he was made for, the kids, and booed by like the 18 to 35. So it's in some sense, like it's like, let's go Barney sucks. It's very much that same sort of dynamic. Bray Wyatt coming back to Extreme Rules. That's great. I'm very excited about that. But yeah, I'm loving what Jericho's doing. Jericho is on the top of his game right now.
What was your most awkward moment in the filming of this documentary?
When I was talking to Bill Nye, and I was like, I know you're not really a scientist. He's like, whoa. And like that, because what I meant was like, I know he, there was like a back and forth. I was like, well, what I meant was, and he's like, oh, he was just like teasing me. But like, I guess that was it,
What's your best piece of advice for success?
For me, and I don't know if this is good to tell anyone, but I never had a plan B. I think of Dark Knight Rises all the time when Batman's trying to get out of that cave and he keeps using the rope. And they say the only way to get out here is like to have a harness, right? A safety net, and once he had no safety net and he had to really jump for real, that's when he got out of the cave. And to me, that's what I think of. I have no safety net.
Hey, it obviously worked out though, right?
Yeah, right.
Why should people watch I Love You, You Hate Me?
Because I think it has a good message. You know, we talk about where hate comes from, and I think everyone sometimes hates things that they don't know why they're hating it, and to kind of look at that behavior and maybe, you know, look inside ourselves and go, why would I do that? Why would I hate that? So I think it's a good watch because we look at a lot of different things when it comes to children's characters and why they're important in our lives.
I Love You, You Hate Me, streaming right now on Peacock, 2-part series. Fantastic documentary. Where can we find you online, and where can we find you next?
So it's my name, Tommy Avallone, Avallone 3. And that's on Instagram and Twitter. And then, if you go to thehousefrom.com, that's our Kickstarter about making a movie about famous houses and what's it like to live in the Full House, Home Alone, Friday, Twilight House. So it's check that out, thehousefrom.com.